All right, so thank you guys for coming. Today we're going to have a session presented by Dr. Dwinnells. He's going to talk about improving the student retention in online courses. I'll be moderating the session. I'll be behind the computer, so if you have any questions for online people, if you have any questions, please use the chat function, and I will relay your questions to Dr. Dwinnells. With that, we can get started.
Okay,
Steve.
very good. Well, I'm glad you're here this morning. I know the weather out there is not very good, so thanks for walking over. For those of you in the building, thank you for coming upstairs or downstairs. Today we're going to talk about online student retention and how we can help as faculty members. The presentation objectives are fairly straightforward. One is that we're going to be able to identify and use the various segments of Blackboard's Retention Center. Now, Retention Center is a rudimentary product, but nevertheless, it does have some fairly strong attributes to it. So we're just going to try to do a cursory look through that. We're going to identify several services and a software tool that will aid in student retention in tutoring. And then we're going to try to identify several faculty actions that can aid in retention, so pedagogical type things. Faculty tool, Retention Center. I'm going to spend a few minutes here showing you static images so you'll get an idea of what you're looking at when we go to the live demo. First thing is you simply go to Control Panel and then select Evaluation, and then from Evaluation you select the Retention Center. It's built in, you don't have to do anything, it comes as a default package. There's really nothing you have to modify or change, although you'll find and discover that you'll probably want to change some of the things with it. And when you get that, you'll get this image, this screen. It's not very clear, but before I go through the three segments of the page, let me just draw your attention to the four circled areas. This is what Retention Center covers. Missed deadlines, grades, activity alerts, and access alerts. So those are the four primary attributes that get covered. So obviously missed deadlines is self-explanatory. Grades, now this is one that you probably want to change because you can monitor specific grades on a specific assignment. So if there's, let's say, a midterm that you really want to know how people are doing, you can select just the midterm and a certain grade point that they have to be above or below before it flags it. Activity is activity within Blackboard itself. And then access, obviously, is when you sign in. When was the last time you signed into the system? If, for example, you had nothing wrong, all your students are doing exactly what they should be doing, then Blackboard actually gives you a happy face, and it says all your students are doing great. Don't know why they threw the happy face in there, but I guess they did nevertheless. And you will find classes that do have that because the students are up to date with all of their activities, the parameters have been set properly. So you could potentially get this. Now let me cover the page by itself here. There are three major sections. The first one is called the at-risk table. These were the four areas I just mentioned: the missed deadlines, grades alert, activity alert, and access alert. You'll see the students listed on the left-hand side. I've hazed them out for FERPA reasons. Blackboard calls these red dots. I call them hotspots because I think it makes more sense to call them a hotspot. What this flags is that, for example, student A here has a missed deadline. It has met a certain criteria that I'll show you here in a few minutes. So this first student has missed all four categories. In other words, this first student is in trouble because there are four of the four categories. This student meets all four at-risk parameters. Subsequently, student B has three. A whole bunch of them have three. And then there are a whole host of students that have two parameters that they've hit that shows that they're at risk. The right-hand side is very interesting because it's the monitoring area. And what you can do is monitor a specific student. So let's say this first student who is really hurting here you want to monitor them specifically. By flagging them as a monitored student, up here in the top right-hand corner, you would actually, every time you signed in, would see that student with all 4 of the attributes and where they stand at that current time. Also, if you want to monitor, for example, students who are doing well, which is something that a lot of faculty don't do, let's say you want to know everyone who got a 90 or above on their midterm. You can actually set a monitor parameter that does that. It will list the number of students and then actually list the students themselves. So you can flag, you can then notify them and say, hey, you all did a great job on your midterm. Any of you want to be a TA next year? I mean, whatever the scenario is. And finally, the third area is your course activity. And this is for the instructor. And this shows what you've been doing. Here under assessments, for example, there's been 16 days pending since you've graded a assignment under Group 2 Module and Reconstruction. There are two quizzes you have not graded in Module 6, and it's been for 12 days. So it gives you information about you yourself. What's really interesting, if you have multiple instructors in a course, each instructor sees their own view of that. So if you're an instructor of Group 5, then it would just show that segment. It wouldn't show mine or someone else's. Okay, does that make sense so far? Okay. Now, next thing I want to show you is this red bar. Now, it looks like just a highlighted area or an area for decoration or something like that, but it gives you the total number of students that are under some kind of risk here. What's neat about it is when you click on it, it gives you the breakdown. For example, under missed deadlines, you have 32 students. Under grades alert, you have 2. Under activity alert, you have 12. And under access, you have 5. Now, what's the importance of that? What's the significance of that? Well, what's interesting is you can click, like here I clicked on access alert. I just went up to this gray area and clicked on it. And it gives me a list of 5 students, these 5 that are listed. And at one time, I can notify all 5 students that, that they're running late, that they haven't accessed the system in at least 5 days. So I'll show you that when we get into the real-time module. So what it does, if I want to notify all 32 students, just click on that. It would give me a notify parameter, and I can, in one email, notify all 32 students. Yes?
Is this the same between the current Blackboard Learn and SAS system, do you know?
Yeah, the question is this the same thing between Learn and SAS? And yes, it is. And the reason I don't have the SAS version up, because when I first started creating this, SAS was broke, or the SAS side was broken. They have since gotten it fixed, and it looks exactly like this. Okay. Now, under Retention Center, on the top right-hand corner, you'll see Customize. Now, this allows you to customize any of these parameters that you want to, that we talked about, the missed deadlines, grades alert, etc. But it also allows you to see what exactly the parameters are. So, under Default Activity Rule, I have modified that. And what I've said is, any activity in the last 5 days is 10% below the course average. That was just a parameter I picked because this was a system that I was just playing with. If you click on the down chevron under Default Activity Rule, you're given an edit table that includes editing that rule, or you can include it in the risk table or exclude it from the risk table. And again, you'll see this in real time in just a minute. Here is the parameter for the default activity rule. You give it a name. I could call it anything. I could call it Steve's rule, whatever. Do I want to include it in the risk table? Yes, I do. If you don't, then what happens, it shows up on the monitor side, the right-hand side of the screen. And then what I did was I defined the criteria here. In this particular example, I said the user activity in the last 1 week is 20% below the average. So that's the criteria I use to flag a student who might be at risk. So you can use whatever criteria you feel fit to do. What's really good, we discovered, is that when you copy your course from semester to semester, these rules, however you have them set, will copy over as well. So that's a really nice, that's a nice feature. Also, you can create your own rules. Besides modifying the existing rules, and here are, by the way, the default rules as it comes out of the box. It gives you the criteria there. That's exactly what it comes out as. But I may want to create a rule. Now, why would I want to create a rule? Well, again, I may want to monitor good students. So I may want to say, give me everybody that had 100 on an exam. Or I may want to say, how many people have missed the deadline as of today? So you can set different kinds of parameters by creating a new rule. And you can include that rule within the at-risk table or as a monitoring unit. Again, you'd receive an edit box, and this would give you the blank rule that you can give a rule name if you want it in the risk table, and then days since the last course access, I could put 20, 15, 5, 1, whatever I'd like to. Okay, any questions so far? Anybody online have a question, Ned?
No.
Okay, everybody's good. This is a summary that we've talked about briefly with the static images. Now I want to show you the product in real life and try to give you a feel for what it really looks like here.
Here, let me have.
What's that? Oh, you were in another one? Yeah, there's a test course. Okay, so I signed into a test course. Now, the data in the test course is a little iffy because it was a test course. So I added stuff, changed stuff around, just to kind of get the buttons going. So if you see something that doesn't seem to make sense, ask me about it, but it's more than likely because it's a test system. We've been playing with it. So as I said, go to Evaluation under your control panel, select Retention Center, and it'll give you that screen that we talked about. Scroll down here for you. Now, it looks like Steve Dwinnells, along with a number of other students, are in a world of hurt because we have failed or we are at risk in all 4 categories that are listed. So you notice the way they're listed as well. If everyone has 4 hotspots, then it's listed alphabetically, D, I, K, M, etc. Then it goes to 3 hotspots, and it lists those alphabetically, etc. So that's the order in which they go. So let's take a look at Steve Dwinnells. Let's look at his missed deadlines. So you simply click on the area, and it's like, I've missed a deadline by 0 days. In other words, I'm late as of today. As of today, I have not turned in an assignment. What assignment have I not turned in? Using a Blackboard quiz. So I haven't taken the quiz. So I'm late in my deadline. Actually, I'm late for 74 days. I have not taken this. So I'm a little late on that. Let's check my grades alert. Now what I did here, you can check for your total grades. That is the whole grade for your time, for the student's period of time. Or what I like to do is just take an assignment because I want to look at assignment specific. So I set a rule that said, if you got below a 75, flag it. And here I got a 35 on the test. So that would show right away that I'm in trouble. Activity alert. No activity in the course. The parameters are that the activity in the last 200 days is 40% below course average. Again, I just made up some rules. What you would see normally in a real class would be some type of date or time frame that says the last activity was as of this. Yes?
You may have said this and I may have missed it, but what is activity?
Mm-hmm.
Is that any kind of submission or anything in the class, or?
The question is, what is activity? Activity is any clicks within Blackboard. So what doesn't count is, let's say you go in, you sign in, you click around a couple of things, and the last click was at 2:05. But then you don't do anything until nothing happens, the system logs you out. The last click that counted was the previous one to 2:05 to 2:05. So in other words, it doesn't say, oh, look at Mary Ann, she's been on for 4 hours. It doesn't do that. It takes the last click. So it's by click, and that click can be anything, just as long as it's a click. It doesn't know enough to discern between a submission or looking at a report or what have you. And then the access alert tells us that the last time I accessed it as a student was 63 days ago. And the parameter was the last access was more than 5 days ago. Well, I hit 63. Now, again, if I hit this red bar, click on the red bar, it gives me this, this series of breakdowns. So let's say I want to send everybody who has a grade alert. I'll click on 8 because that's a grade alert one. I can notify students. We do not have an observer rule, so you can ignore that. Click on students. Now you see all the students listed there under the to field. But in fact, whenever you have more than one student, it's equivalent to a blind carbon. It actually puts the course name there. It gives you a default templated statement, but it's not very good. So what I would suggest is change it and write your own message out. The bad thing is, the next time you go into it, it gives you the template again. It doesn't save
your message.
It doesn't save your message, which is really a fault. Now, I have not checked this in the SAS version, the new Blackboard. I don't know if it allows you to keep it or not. I suspect no. But so then once I'm ready for that, once I've written out my note, I can simply submit it. I hit submit. And it will send a notification just like it sends any other email out. Now, the other thing I want to show you here is, where is it? Over here with the monitoring section. Let's go back to customize up here, the top right-hand corner. And what you're going to see is 2 rules that I have created that are not included in the risk table. You'll see the no there that says I have not included these 2 rules in the risk table. So they will not show up. Okay, there's a question online.
A quick question, does it send a notice to instructor as well?
Yes, it does. Yes. And you can also include on there a list of the people who it got sent to. Because remember, it comes as a blind carbon, so you can't really see. But there's a option that when you click on it, it'll come out. Okay, so what I did here was there was a wiki assignment called FBS blah, 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 blah. And I want anybody who got above an 80% to be flagged. Also, I want anybody that was a student with a grade above an 85 on a sample assignment that I gave to be flagged. Okay, so those are two that will not show up in the risk table, but they are rules that I've created. So when I go back to Retention Center, what I see on the right-hand side are these things. Here's the wiki that I wanted everybody who got an 80% or greater. I click on the 8 students, and it lists the 8 students and the grade that they received. And again, what I can do here is notify the selected students. Now, this is really important, and the reason is, I'm going to mention this a little bit later, is that good students need reinforcement as well as bad students or poor students needing help. So again, these are online students who for the most part are probably by themselves taking a course late at night or the weekend, and they need to know that they're doing well. So if you have not provided, for example, ample feedback on assignments, it would be really good to send them an email that says, hey, you're doing a great job, keep up the good work, etc. So it gives you the ability to notify those selected students again. Now, what about monitoring a student? Let me show you that, and then we'll move on. So Steve Dwinnells has a lot of problems here. All I have to do to monitor Steve Dwinnells is hit monitor. And then when I go back to Retention Center, you see me over here in a box on the right-hand side. Now it says no grade in course because I was monitoring a very specific item. I was not monitoring the entire grade for my course at that point. I was monitoring a very specific assignment. But I can go into the grades alert and look at it. If I want to undo it, all I have to do is click the star and it goes away. And I'm no longer monitoring that student. I would be kind of cautious with that because you don't want to have 15 students listed on the right-hand side. That'll just confuse you after a while. I consider using the risk table as much as you can. Okay, any questions about the risk table, Ned?
From Ann, is the Retention Center email alert the only instance where email is sent as a blind carbon copy to all students?
Within Blackboard?
I assume yes.
I don't know the answer to that. I know Retention Center does it, but I don't know the other applications within Blackboard to know whether or not it blind carbons it.
I think you can do within the grade center and send email
Can
to
you?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the question? Did we answer your question, Ann? Yes, it is an option. And I'll check that in a second.
Okay. All right. So that's the basics of this rudimentary product. Again, it's very simple, but it does give you some good information that allows you to monitor at-risk students. So at any point during the semester, you can quickly go to Retention Center under evaluation and look and see what students are at risk. I would probably just simply use the default as it comes for now. And then as you begin to teach and you want to know more specific information, you can customize the rules to match whatever you would like for it to do. Okay? Any other questions about, yes?
So when you're creating rules, could you set up a range? So like, let's say you wanted to know students that were sort of falling in the middle of a path and send them an email to kind of encourage them on.
You would have to set probably 3 rules. 1, 2, and then 3, with the range being set in the, really, you're setting the range by the number 1 and 3, okay. And 2 is picking it up. That's probably how you do it. Because the criteria doesn't have a range parameter that you can set.
But so can you do, okay, range 1 is your high end,
yeah.
Range 2 is your low end, and then give me a list of anyone who didn't meet the criteria for 1 or 2?
No, you can't do that. You would have to set specifically the parameters. If you say high was 90 or above, low was 50 or below, then you'd have to set the middle that said less than 90 or more than 50.
But it will let you do an or statement or?
No, it does not let you do an or statement. No, it's only one criteria that it allows. It doesn't allow ors or ands or any kind of Boolean
So you
type
just have to
algebra.
do it visually at that point.
Yeah. Again, a rudimentary product that Blackboard has not invested real heavily into. But Ned, you have a question?
From Leslie Hardman, she see a report function in evaluation. Can she run a reports for our custom rules?
There's not I don't think there's a reporting function within Retention Center. There is course reports, which is something completely different. It does give you the ability to run different reports that come with the product.
Okay, thank you.
But there's nothing within Retention Center that allows you to run a report that I know of. Okay, I want to show you now just a couple of other things here. There's a very good tutorial. It's only 4.5 minutes long. If you just go to Google and do Help Blackboard Retention Center, it'll give you this video, which covers basically what I covered, only a little bit more simplistically and maybe not as in great a depth. But it is a good video if you forget when you go back. You're saying, what was that thing that he talked about? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is available student tutoring resources. Now, remember the goal of this little talk, and that is to help retain students that are online students. That's the goal. And one of the things that can do that is the utilization of tutoring resources. And there's a lot that I wasn't aware of until I started doing this. There's the Student Success Center, the Gurus, the Dwinnells Studio, Smart Thinking, which is a software package built into all eCampus courses, a math tutoring service, and discipline-specific tutoring services. And I have a handout here for you that you just want to take one and pass it on, Jennifer. It just gives the information as to where you can find out this tutoring information for you. Now, a lot of us know about these. For example, the Student Success Center located in the library, but they also have, as you can see here in the red, they also service online students. So this is really important to remember, that all of these tutoring services I'm mentioning have an online component. Academic support with EKU Gurus. According to this, they can help you with everything from degree works to tutoring and everything in between. Now, I'm not sure if that's a true statement, but apparently they can do a lot. And simply calling this number, you can set up a Skype visit with them and get tutoring that way. This is one that's rarely used by our online students, and it's a shame. The Dwinnells Studio has an online component, WC Online, and there's also a phone number where you can set up an appointment. But what they do is, this is really for communication type stuff, writing or, what does it say here? Essays, research papers, proposals, out-of-class projects. I think they'll even do resumes for you. Yes, scholarship applications, business letters, etc. So they have a lot of good resources that our students are not taking advantage of. The math tutoring service, you can Skype. There is a phone number as well, and I have it on that sheet. And then there is a page on our website that lists all the tutoring services that are discipline specific. So physics might have a tutoring service, or sociology might have a tutoring service. And it lists all of those and gives you contact information for them. And in Smart Thinking, another tool that's not used very heavily, but I wish it were, This allows you to basically get an online tutor for what ails you. So whatever the issue is, more than likely they have a tutor that can work with you in order to get through the issue that you're talking about. There's also, you can submit your writing there, you can submit a question. Some faculty now have gotten to the point where one of the first assignments for students is to go here and to show proof that you've been there and that you've talked to them. Whether you just submit a question and get a response back, but something that shows that you know a little bit about smart thinking. Okay. Any questions over there, Ned?
Nothing.
Still good?
I have a few, but I'll ask him at the end.
Okay. Here's the thing that I just handed out to you all. For those of you who are online now, if you're interested, we'll get your email and I can email this information to you so that you'll have it. Other opportunities and actions. Now these are just a few, and I would hope that you might have some additional ideas. Most of you know about the COI model, especially if you've taken PD2 here at the IDC. The community of inquiry model, we won't get into it, but it has 3 components, all of which intersect to give you the best educational experience. A social, cognitive, and teaching presence. What you'll notice there is the common word presence. And that's what I want to talk about for just a minute here. How do you have presence? Well, one is through discussion boards. Now, there's a lot of debate right now about discussion boards. Some people say that discussion boards are useless. Others say you shouldn't be involved as a faculty member in discussion boards. All the way to the other extreme that says you should be involved in virtually every thread that's written out. So I tend to err on the high side. I would much rather be involved and make sure that the discussion doesn't go tangentially somewhere else, because that's easy to do, especially in classes like ethics or philosophy or some of those kinds of discussions. It can veer off very quickly. To simply let students all interact with no response from the faculty member probably, and this is just my opinion, probably is not a great idea, only because then, as I've said, you've allowed the students to run rampant with ideas that may be missing the boat of the content that you're trying to get over to them. So discussion boards are a great way to have presence in your class. Powerful and meaningful feedback is another. For a long time, when I first started teaching, if somebody did well on a given assignment, my feedback was, "Good job!" exclamation point. That's it. But even now, with students who do really well, I try to give positive feedback, like, "This was a great paper. You could have strengthened it by," and give them some more examples. So meaningful feedback for the student is very helpful because they know that you bothered to look at it. They know that you've given it some thought, that you've reviewed it, and that you have some things that can help them. I had a professor at U of L who every week picked 3 to 4 students out of her class and individually emailed them on something that they have done. Either they posted a good discussion board, either their grade was hurting, whatever the issue is, she wrote individual emails to them. So email is a good way to still reach students. Using the announcement function in Blackboard with the click on the send email is another really good way. Telephone. We have one professor who actually calls his students on the first day of class to try to reach them and say, "Hey, welcome to whatever the class name is. I'm your professor this semester." That's really hard to do if you've got 50, 60, 70, 100 students. But if it's a small class, that's another way to do it. You can also hold live sessions like using Collaborate or Zoom, as well as a phone conversation. Again, struggling students, we should try to offer them help. Excelling students, just reinforcement of some good work through praise. I think that's really important for students. Something I read just this morning, and that's why I added this slide, was there was a great article about this whole topic of retention online. One of the ideas was building a learning module, and what this author was suggesting was that at the very beginning of your course, maybe in the introductory module section or even one prior to that you give the student some resources of how to learn. And there are a lot of resources online, videos, MOOCs, articles, any way that you give a student that they can learn how to learn. That's what metacognition is, right? So building a learning module, the sad thing is, as he pointed out, there's no real samples out there yet. So if you do it, you're kind of rolling your own, if you will, to make one like that. A reflection journal. Now this I had kind of mixed feelings about, because in the reflection journal, he suggested that the student write things like, what will I learn this week? And then as the week goes on, he writes them down, she writes them down. Then the next question would be, what have I really learned? And then you write down, of those things you listed, what did I really learn? And you have this journaling with the faculty member. The problem I saw with that was that he required no points for the assignment. Well, I don't know if they're going to do it if there's no points. But it's a good way to help a student and help the faculty member know what the student is thinking about. And then the scaffolding of content, a study done by Wandler and I don't know how you say it, Imbrali in 2017 recommends scaffolding as a means to help the student learn. Breaking it up into smaller pieces, providing sample work and rubrics, setting up peer-to-peer collaboration network where students can ask each other. So again, two arguments to this. One is that that's what teaching is. You're helping the student learn. The other argument is we don't need to be babysitting our students. They should know this already. They should just figure it out themselves. So faculty have to decide which end that they want to fall on with that. Okay. Any questions? No questions? What about underrepresented minority students? Alex Heinzman did a really good presentation a couple of months ago about underrepresented minority students. And here are just some thoughts that she had to help in retention. Maintaining and communicating high academic standards. Don't fudge it so that underrepresented minorities somehow get a pass. Keep that high academic standard there for everyone. Value the students' cultural knowledge and experiences. Encourage self-affirmation. This can be done through things like discussion boards or students talking about what it is they hope to learn in a class. Anything that will give them some sense of power over their own destiny, if you will. Allow flexibility and variety in both content and assessment. Include diverse representation. Creating a cooperative learning community. April Blakely talked about a growth mindset about 2 months ago, and I thought that was a really good presentation. She talked about growth mindset towards intelligence. Remove stereotypes and biases from the course content and conversation, and use gender and race fair language in assessment. Now this is just a subset of what Alex had, but I think these things can aid in student retention. Any questions about that? Anything online? Okay. Well, I'm about done. The last objective was to find out if you all have any ideas that I messed up on or missed as deals with student retention? Anything you've seen that really works that I missed?
Well, you guys have questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, outside the retention center, the tool that I've started using is inside the grade center. You can color code ranges of scores. And so then it is possible to kind of make a heat map when looking at your grade center overall to get a quick visual of how students are performing.
Okay, the comment was that Barry uses color coding in the grade center so that you can create what's equivalent to a heat map and see very quickly visually where students are. I think that's a great idea.
A question from Anne. She said, do you have to set up a retention rule to email students under certain conditions, or do you have to send those emails each time? That was back when you talked about retention center.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Say that again.
Do you have to set up retention rule to email students under certain conditions, or you have to send those emails every time, each time? So I assume once they meet certain conditions, those emails will be sent automatically?
No, there's no automatic sending of the emails. You have to do it yourself. So if a student gets a 30 on one test and you send the message out, and then the next test they get a 50, you'd have to resend or send another message out. You can't. It doesn't automatically pick that up.
Okay. One more question from Tammy. Can you just expand on use of BCC or blind copy in the retention emails?
Yeah. What happens is when you send a notification, an email, the to field, which lists all the students to whom you are sending, acts as a blind carbon if there are multiple students. There is also a BCC field also given in that template, and that's where you could blind carbon, I don't know, maybe somebody that's a facilitator in your class, or somebody that you don't necessarily want students to know have done that, or that they see that information. If it's just one student that you're sending it to, it does not blind carbon.
All right, two more questions.
Yeah.
Question from Sarah. What are your thoughts on semester-long projects? In my experience, they can be great to put things together and to increase motivation, which I hope increases retention. But they can also have negative effects when students misses a few weeks and then he or she is lost, which might reduce retention.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The question deals with semester-long projects and whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it could be a good thing by enhancing motivation, or it could be a poor thing if the student misses a period of time and gets behind. I would tend to err on the high side and say that that's a good project, because I think the number of students who are going to miss out is probably fewer than the ones that are going to gain something from it. I don't know if you can have a happy medium there. The one PowerPoint we looked at talked about scaffolding the information, and that's really what you're doing. You're building on a course project as the semester goes on, and that seems to be a positive way to do it. So I would say continue with the semester-long project, and the outliers, you would have to do something else with it, I think.
Can I?
Yes.
So two things that I've done with semester-long projects is, one part of it's the scaffolding, that is having sub-assignments or pieces that have their own grades. So that incentivizes students not to get behind. So that, it's the part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. So breaking it into pieces. But when I do that, I want to make sure that I'm saying, okay, now this part 1 you just completed, let's look how this is going to affect the end project, so that you're always tying the pieces to the final project. And then the other piece of that that I've used is actually having peer evaluations, especially on group projects, when it allows students to get their frustration out. And it normally, like, people are like, you let students, rat each other out. My experience is usually students are actually very, very fair. It's like, yeah, they got a little behind, but eventually they, person X kicked it up and finished what they were supposed to do. But by having the peer evaluation in there, that way I can also say, if you didn't complete assignment 1, be reminded that your group partners, this may reflect on the way your peer that they evaluate you. And so it gives me a chance to go back and remind them that this is not just an assignment that they're turning into me, but that it's affecting their relationship with their peers. And if there is somebody that's just totally like a complete freeloader, those people pop out. But the other thing that pops out is if there's a group where there's one person that basically did all the work, it's surprising. Students will actually say, you know what, this person really carried the load. So I've actually found that the peer evaluations kind of is I think it allows students a chance to vent what otherwise is just kind of captured frustration for them.
Makes sense. Great response. Any other questions?
Any chance of getting an attendance tracker option for Blackboard? Is there recommended criteria to measure online attendance? I'm assuming this might be some performance measure beyond the student login.
Can I say something to that? I mean, since I went to Blackboard World this year, they are working on attendance tracking. So that is something that they are developing right now.
Okay, so the question dealt with attendance tracking and whether or not there was a way to do that. And Mary Ann responded that coming from Blackboard World this year, that in fact they are working on such a function.
That's it. I don't have
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you folks who were online, and thank you for those who came. I appreciate it.